to 8 p.m. The thing that has changed this year is that all the voting precincts have been consolidated into simply 2 locations, so you'll vote either at the McCarthy Middle School or at the Senior Center. Let me run through those for those here probably know that, but people watching at home may not. These are the precincts that vote at the McCarthy Middle School. Precincts 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The 2 that vote at the Senior Center on Groton Road are precincts 2 and 3. So if that's been a change for you, be sure you go to the right place. The format that we're going to use is that we are first have invited all of the people who are running for posts, town government, that are uncontested. None of those people have chosen to accept that invitation this evening, but I will tell you who you are, so you won't be surprised to see their names on the ballot when you go on April 5th. For Planning Board, we have 2 incumbents who have chosen to run for re-election, Henry Parley Jr. and Edmund Rue. So those will be on the ballot for Planning Board for 3-year terms. For Planning Board for a 2-year unexpired term is George Jaharoulis, and he is also an incumbent running for re-election. Housing Authority, 5-year term, 1 seat, 1 candidate, and that's Georgiana Mueller. And then for the Board of Health, 3-year term, 1 seat, 1 person running, and that's the incumbent, Eric Kaplan. And the Cemetery Commission, also elected position in Chelmsford. The incumbent, Gerald Hardy, is running for re-election, so his name will appear on the ballot. So those are the uncontested seats, but none of those candidates are here. We do have hot contests, however, for school committee, constable, selectman, and library trustee. And the format that we will follow is we will invite each of the candidates for each of those seats to come up at the same time. We're doing away with opening statements this time. We're not going to do that, but we are going to allow the contestants to question each other. And more importantly, we would love and invite questions from you who are sitting here at the police station tonight to write your questions, send them up to me. And also, we have 2 members from the press. Tom Cristiano is here, who's the managing editor of the Chelmsford News, and Alana Melanson, is it? Right, emphasis on the right syllable, from the Lowell Sun. And they too will be presenting questions so that you can hear what the candidates have to say. So with that said, are there any questions from anybody here about the slight change in the league's format with no opening statement? So if I could ask the 2 candidates for school committee, if they are both here, Barbara Scarr, who is an incumbent, and John Moses, to come up to the microphone. You know which is your seat, and I don't, because I'm looking at the back of the cards, but by gender, I think I can work this out. So thank you both for being here so very much. So let me read again the directions here so that you'll all know it. There is no opening statement, but they will have an opportunity to each give you a 2-minute closing statement. All questions will have a 90-second response time, and we have our capable timer. Tom is at the stopwatch. And then there are also an opportunity to ask at least 1 opponent. For you, that's easy. 1 30-second question, and then the response can still be a minute and a half. So I think what I will do is to start with some of the questions that the League has created, and to share with you that a new innovation tonight, which I think is rather wonderful, and I will be taking this back to the Westford League of Women Voters, because some of tonight's questions were prepared by high school students in the Chelmsford High School in the AP Government class, and that's a nifty idea. The League would like to thank the students for their interest in the League's candidate forum and for their questions. So let me just start with a couple of the questions when it's a student question. I'll let you know that. The first one has your name on it, John, so we'll start with you. What's your motivation for running for it says for the Board of Selectmen, but I think since you're running for school committee, I'll rephrase that.
Surprise.
News to you? Well, that might be an interesting answer, actually. But the real question is, what is your motivation for running for school committee, and what are your qualifications, please?
Sure.
The mic.
Excuse me. So the reason I decided to run for school committee was pretty strictly public service. I have a long history of public service. The first time it was by raising my hand for joining the United States Army back in 1996, and I was coming up to retirement for my 20 years. So at the end of my 20-year commitment with the military, I kind of discussed it with my wife, and by discussed it said I'm probably going to run for school committee, and started looking for other opportunities to serve my community. And I thought there was really no better way to serve my community than to do it locally, right? So instead of going out and volunteering for some big thing, how do I affect things here? I have a daughter in the school system. She's going to be 6 years old. She's at the Byam, and I have a 2-year-old boy. And that's really it. In terms of qualifications, like I said, 20-year Army Reserve career, 3 deployments. I've been very successful in the private sector. I have managerial experience, and I think I just have a generally good way about me. And that's really it.
Thank you so very much. Barbara, you're an incumbent, so we're tapping into your experience here. What do you believe has been your greatest contribution thus far as a member of the school committee, and what's next?
I think I've been very available to people to voice their concerns, and that includes our staff at the schools and parents. I've been consistent. I have attended every meeting. I think I may have missed one when I was ill, but other than that, I've done my research. I came to meetings prepared, and I did a lot of research in addition to that. As far as going forward, I think we're in a really terrific place. I think that this facilities assessment that we are undertaking is very exciting, and it gives us an opportunity to see where we need to look for space and how we are going to move forward in our school system.
I think that's a segue into the next question, which says, and is to address to both of you. We'll start with you, Barbara. The school committee is currently engaged in the study of school facilities. If the results of the study recommend major improvements, particularly improvements to provide space for full-day kindergarten, that go beyond what the town can afford in its operating budget, would you ask the Board of Selectmen to place a property 2.5 debt exemption on the ballot?
I live in Chelmsford.
You might give the history of that for people who are new to town.
Our town is not predisposed to approving 2.5 overrides. I don't see that happening. I think that we have a superintendent in place who has tremendous experience in working in a city, the city of Lowell, that put new buildings in place, and he had to go through the whole process. He's very familiar with this process. We're not learning anything together. He knows what he's doing here. And the first thing he said is, you can't even consider putting in a full-day kindergarten until you've done a facilities assessment. We need to know what the space, if the space is available. You can't say that, yeah, we all want it, because if you want it, it doesn't mean it can happen. So we need to see what we have to do to make it happen, and this is the first step. And then that would open the doors with evidence going to the Mass School Building Association and applying for any monies available. So we're on a path.
Okay. John, your thoughts about if this report comes back and requires more money than was in the operating budget about a 2.5 override, please.
Sure. So there's a few things here. So the facilities assessment doesn't just evaluate the space. It also evaluates better ways to use that space. So hopefully what I think is going to come out of this are some changes in terms of how we group classes and things like that. So there are other ways to optimize the space you already have. I feel like the residents of the town, and of which I also am a resident of, our taxes are very high as a residential community. That being said, I think someday, at some point, it takes a long time to build a school and to be improved. It takes about 10 years from the day you vote on it, and that doesn't mean you have the money up front, but it means you have to vote on it and approve it. So looking 10 years out, at some point in the next few years, we're going to have to make some decisions on where we're going to end up at that point. I would rather see more economic growth in the commercial and industrial sectors and earn some revenue that way. The school committee doesn't make revenue. We rely on the town and the people and the businesses. So,
thank you. This is one that just came in from the people who are here tonight, and as a parent of a 6th grader, you might appreciate pondering this, John. Do you think the students should be taught cursive? Why or why not?
Wow. As a person, I don't actually write in cursive. I don't know how, so I've done pretty well without it. I don't have a strong stance either way. It does take time to teach it, and if it doesn't have a tangible benefit down the road, Maybe not. I don't have a strong opinion, though.
Okay, great. Barbara, thoughts about cursive in the Chelmsford
I
school system?
can write in cursive. I just can't read my own writing. So.
Right.
No, I really don't have any strong thoughts. I think that the keyboard that Alana is using pretty much solves the cursive. It would be nice if our students could sign their name legibly, I suppose, but I just think that maybe that's a time gone by.
This is one of the questions that was created by the students at the AP Government class. We'll start with you, Barbara. What plans do you have to help students feel safe and secure from bullying?
That's a great question. My honest feeling is that there are two parts to that equation. One is that students have to be respectful of each other. And that's not anything that we can go into that building as individuals and demand. That has to come from them. I think that they are exposed to what bullying looks like. I think they can identify it, but they need to step into it and say enough is enough. That's a difficult thing to do, and that's what we're working on. As far as safety in our buildings, I think our buildings are very safe. We have, pass key our entries. The buildings are locked down during the day that you can't just walk in off the street and walk into one of our buildings. There are cameras viewing anyone who enters the building. But bullying is that's a difficult one.
John, any insight to that as a school committee member, as what the committee or the administration should and can be doing?
Sure. So I agree that personal responsibility takes a big part in how you teach your kids at home. I think is a really big part of keeping people from becoming bullies or being bullied. I think inside the school committee, where we actually have influence, and with the superintendent, is really having a strong open door policy with teachers, with nurses, having a reporting structure that requires, if somebody sees bullying, that goes up the chain. In the military, we do that. So if somebody comes to you with an open door, or if you witness something, it is required that you report it. And if you don't, you're held liable and you're held responsible, really. So that's really it for me. I think it's really about open door, open discussion, and parents teaching their children respect at home.
Thank you. Okay. A parent with 2 kids in the school can easily spend out of pocket $1,500 for their kids to ride the bus, play sports, participate in an activity, and then there are the fundraisers that each has. Is there any way to make these fees deductible for tax purposes? At least that would take some of the sting off. John, do you have any idea about whether that's doable?
First, I would like to say I'm completely empathetic. I'm completely empathetic to that plight, because I spend a lot of money on things like the bus and sports and activities, and I pay out of pocket just like all the other parents in town. As for the tax exemption question, we don't, in the committee, I don't have a lot of influence on that. I don't pass any kind of tax laws, tax code. I mean, really, that's all state and city-based type things. Would I like it to be tax exempt? Yes.
Okay. All right.
I will support any candidate that supports tax exemptions.
Barbara, anything to add to that in terms
Well,
of
we do have a little, we do have access to our representatives at the state level.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we live in a town called Chelmsford, and really, at this point, we have no influence with respect to a re-election or an election of a state rep.
Right.
It's very frustrating, but the truth is that they could not win Chelmsford and still win the elections, and they all know it. So we have to go in there being persuasive and insistent, and I think that is a great idea.
Interesting. Several years ago, school committee members took direct actions that resulted in more Chapter 70 monies for Chelmsford. What actions would you make on the school committee for more Chapter 70 monies? This is sort of where you just were. Talk to the state representatives and senator is not an acceptable answer. So another alternative. Barbara, would you start with this,
I
please?
would like to thank Mary France, Mary Tiano, Kathy Duffett, Donna Newcomb. We have a lot of parents who spend a lot of time going to the State House and working with our reps. I am not sure. It's been in committee for a while now to restructure Chapter 70. My personal opinion is that it's probably a lost cause for us, and we might want to consider focusing on special education reimbursement, or at least a larger piece of that equation, because special ed reimbursement is an area that is, you can't predict what the cost is going to be. You can't refuse a child's services, nor would we ever want to do that. They are entitled to an education, and what we need is the state to realize the escalating cost of special education services and how they can help us to meet that cost, or at least have some kind of a formula with respect to that is serving us better.
John, do you have any approach to getting more Chapter 70 money or other source of money that would help with Chelmsford and its finances, please?
Sure. So, and I know we can't go talk to our state reps, was one of the prerequisites for that. I do want to say the town of Chelmsford is gerrymandered, and it is at the expense of Chelmsford that many other towns do get better Chapter 70 money. That being said, without the representation or somebody advocating for us on the Hill, Chapter 70 money is probably going to be a dead issue for a long time, unless something changes, some kind of political upswell. Some people in the town of Chelmsford may be getting together, banding together to change the circumstances in which we sit. In terms of money for the schools, I think that is a great idea about getting reimbursement for special ed. I also think, again, if we need to, in terms of money for the schools, is really about some kind of economic growth and working with the committees, other committees, to help grow things like that, and both from the school committee and as residents of the town.
Thank you. Do either members of the press have questions for school committee? I don't want to leave you out of this if you have one. Yes, okay. Tom?
You all set?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Tom?
Well, I've tried to come up with something a little different, so bear with me if you don't like the question. Substitute teachers in Chelmsford and in many surrounding communities that I've checked into start with a pay of $75 per day. So for an approximate 8-hour days, obviously it's minimum wage, about $10 an hour. And these individuals, I believe, have to have at least bachelor's degrees to become substitute teachers. So my question to you is, do you think that's reasonable, and will you push to increase that to at least $125 a day?
I thought of you the other day, Tom.
Go ahead.
I was in Tingsboro Elementary School, and they have a sign next to their check-in, and it says substitute teachers wanted $60 to $70 a day. I mean, I could give the same answer that we give for everything. Where should I cut? That's what it comes down to. It's so tight right now. I don't know. We're not really having too much trouble filling the slots. So, and I understand. We would love, to be able to do that. And if we could do it responsibly, of course we would. So it's something we're looking into, and we've talked about it. But thank you for bringing it to our attention.
John, any?
Sure. So I will say that my mother-in-law, first of all, is a substitute teacher in Billerica, so I know what you're talking about there. This is a tough question because where does the money come from, right? So how do you figure out the money? I will say there is a case to be made, and maybe it's something we discuss in the future, about attracting more talent, so by paying a little bit better. So if we had something we could figure out, but you got to figure out where the money's got to come from. I'm not privy to a lot of the things as a resident right now that Barbara is or Evelyn is.
It's not secret stuff.
It's not secret stuff. You can go out and you can look. It is definitely open. So I would definitely say my answer is I support it. It would just have something we'd have to figure out and look at and see if it's something we can afford.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I have one more question. If you are in the audience and you have questions, now is the time, because we're going to have this be a half-hour discussion, and then you will also have a chance to ask questions of each other. But here's the last one that I have in my hand. Newly elected members of the school committee by law must attend 8 hours of orientation and file a certificate of attendance with the town clerk within 1 year of their election. Says, Barbara, you have not fulfilled this requirement, and can you explain why? Okay, then would you?
It's filed with the town clerk's office.
Okay, so that was erroneous.
There's a copy in the superintendent's office. The classes are held across the state. West Adams, they're scattered all over. I needed to wait that it would be in an area. I ended up taking it in Whittier Technical School, Technical High School. That's a trek.
Yep,
So it was a full day experience, but it's on file in the town clerk's office as well as the superintendent's.
John, will you comply with the law and file for your certificate within the 1 year of your election?
Absolutely. So the first opportunity to take the class, I'm going to take it.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions from those who are here, Do either one of you have a question for either of the other contestants? I just should point out that this is a non-contested race, although Barbara is an incumbent. John is running for a vacancy, so there are 2 seats and 2 contestants. But if you have a question you'd like to ask each other, this is the golden opportunity.
Did you have a fun time at our party on Sunday?
I had a great time at the party. Did you have a good time?
I had a very fun
Good.
time.
That's what the League of Women Voters strives for. I thank you both for, you have you have a closing statement if you want one. Do either one?
I would like one, yes.
Absolutely, John, please start. My apologies.
2 minutes for the closing? All right. So I just wanted to thank everybody in the town. People have been very supportive in the town. From CTV through the school committee, Barbara and Evelyn and Joe and Mike have all been really great. They've sat down, they've spent time with me. People have been very vocal about their opinions and have cornered me at every opportunity to tell me about all the things that we can help fix, which has been great. Having an engaged town like that is really ideal. There are 3 things personally that I want to bring, and not reflecting on the current committee, just that I want to bring to the committee myself, and it's really going to be for me about open government, so transparency, being able to see things that should be in the light should remain in the light. There are things in executive session that we can't discuss, but anything that can be open should be open. The second thing is accountability, both for myself and the superintendent, who's the only person that directly reports to the committee. I think it's important that we have good eyes and ask hard questions of our candidate, of our superintendent. And then the third thing is open communication with me as a committee member. So I'm going to have email. I am going to put some promises in place that if you do email me, you're going to get some kind of response. I'll be on Facebook on the different associated Chelmsford Facebook pages that are out there. And also, I will be running for the open town rep seat for Precinct 5 as a write-in candidate. We had 3 open spots in the precinct. So John Moses, if you want to write me in for that. And I'm asking for your vote on April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Barbara, your closing statement to the voters, please.
First, I want to thank John for running. It absolutely could not have been an easy decision to enter the school committee race. I know it wasn't an easy decision for me to run again. It was a very difficult decision. But it seems right to do it. I feel like I've done a good job, and I want to continue to serve for 3 more years. I would appreciate your vote on April 5th, and I would appreciate your second vote for John Moses.
Thank you both very much. Thank you for running. And thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to, are any of the 4 candidates for constables with us this evening? Okay. Then let me tell you who they are, and let me tell you what a constable does, because I'm told that this is the first time there has been a vacancy in this office in something like 30 years in Chelmsford, so you may not have seen it on the ballot before. So there are 4 people running for 1 seat. Those are Charlie Wojciech, Andrew Weiner, Richard McClure, and William Harvey III. And the League did a little bit of research for you about what a constable does, and let me just read that to you so that you will be informed when you go to cast your vote on the 5th of April. Powers and duties. This is from the town charter for the town of Chelmsford. The constable may serve such civil writs and processes as are authorized by law. The constable shall serve all warrants and other processes of the town. So that means like post the warrant for the town meeting at all the post offices. This is what Wikipedia has to say about a constable. Constables usually serve civil process. They may, however, serve both civil and criminal process and also enforce, capias arrest warrants. Oh, a capias is an order from the court. My Latin failed me there, I apologize. Although the service of civil process makes up a major portion of their duties, Massachusetts constables have broad law enforcement authority. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court stated, quote, "The general duties of a constable are to be vigilant, to preserve the peace, to prevent the commission of crime, and to arrest all offenders who might be arrested without a warrant, and to procure warrants in other instances of crimes committed," unquote. A constable requires an extensive knowledge of civil law and the criminal law aspects that may arise from civil law violations. In this regard, courts prefer constable to handle these matters rather than police officers, as they can execute both civil and criminal process. And had any of them been here, our question would have been, what are your qualifications for this position and why do you want to do it? In place of that, as those people who have cornered John Moses, you will have to find them nearby and ask them that question in person between now and the 5th of April. So that brings us to the Board of Selectmen. There are 2 vacancies, and 3 candidates, none of whom are incumbents, are running. So if those who are here would come up to the table, that would be great. Pat Woistis, Glenn Diggs, and Sandy Martinez, please. We will use the same format with this. Thank you for being here. Yeah. There will be no opening statements. I will ask the questions that have been prepared by both the League and also by the, as soon as I can find them, and also by the students of the government class at Chelmsford High School. So let us just start with you, Glenn, because you're on my right, and I will move my way down the table. What is your motivation for running for the Board of Selectmen, and what are your qualifications, please?
Well, I'd like to help create a common fiscal goal for Chelmsford. Although the town has been able to meet its financial needs, the trends and the dialogue suggest that may not be true in the future. I believe my business background will help to ensure a better future for the citizens of Chelmsford. Although I have not run previously for office, I come with an extensive business background over 40 years.
Just aim it right at your face.
Over 40 years of
There you go.
business background in sales and sales management, including to the level of vice president of sales. I think those qualifications are necessary to bring consensus to various groups in the town and to mold a common platform going forward.
Sandy, would you like to tell us your motivation and your qualifications, please, to be on the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen?
Thank you. My name is Sandy Martinez, and I'm running for the Board of Selectmen because I love Chelmsford. I grew up here. My mother moved here when I was 5 years old, and I've lived here just about ever since. My qualifications are I'm a resident, I'm a taxpayer, I'm also a small business owner, and I know that there's an awful lot of things that the Board of Selectmen does to affect small business owners. I'm a problem solver. I worked in IT for over 30 years, installing mainframe systems, installing on IBM mainframes, tuning and troubleshooting problems. And so I'm a problem solver from the get-go, and I think those qualifications are going to help me on the Board of Selectmen.
And Pat, down to your end of the table, your qualifications and why you've chosen to run. Thank you.
As probably everybody in this room knows, and many watching at home know, I have served on the Board of Selectmen before. I've missed the past year. I've missed being on the board. I missed the interaction with the residents in town. I feel like I've always been accessible and responsive to questions and concerns of residents, and I'll continue to do that if I'm lucky to be elected to the board again. I grew up in town. I know what the issues are that we face as a growing community, and I'm ready to get to work with the board to solve the issues in creative ways. As I said, I served several years on the board. Before that, I was a library trustee. Grew up in Chelmsford, graduated Chelmsford High School. So I feel like I have the in-town connections, the personal connections. I've worked with other board members to launch initiatives in town. So I feel like I do have the qualifications and the background to serve on the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Sandy, we'll start with you on this next one, and I apologize because I don't know what the zoning changes being referenced are, so maybe as you answer the question, each of you could do some education of the voters. Do you support the Route 129 zoning changes as recommended in the master plan, please?
I've been familiarizing myself with it over the last several weeks, and I've been talking to residents, and I'm hearing some concerns from the residents about the overlay. I think I really need to study the whole issue a little bit more and find out what kind of businesses are going to be coming in. Are we going to be talking 6-story office complexes? Are we talking small restaurants and dry cleaners, as some people have proposed?
Okay. Thank you, Pat. Do you have an answer to your support for the zoning changes on 129?
Yes, and I know that what you're talking about is basically adding some amenities to some of the office buildings that are along 129 near the Billerica town line. And I do support that. I think some of those buildings can, at least part of them, be repurposed to have restaurants, maybe dry cleaners, hair salons and things like that to serve the people that work in those office buildings. And I do support that effort going forward. I would encourage the planning board to come up with a zoning bylaw change for town meeting that will do it in a comprehensive way, but also a way that won't negatively impact that area.
So just to clarify, there is nothing on the warrant for the upcoming town meeting that relates to this. This is further down the road, just so voters know. There's not anything in the 2016 warrant? Yes, no? We'll find out. Glenn, I need your thoughts, please, on your support for the 129 zoning changes as recommended by the master plan.
Well, there was an original master plan put together some years ago, and in 2010, I believe there was a lot of work done by the planning board to create an overlay district for that area. It was brought to town meeting, and there was so much opposition that it was pulled from the warrant. At this time, there's a lot of discussion because of what's been going on in the town with people, with companies leaving, for example, Kronos and Mercury, that the idea of establishing that area of town, that specific area of town, as a very pro-business environment to redevelop a lot of the structures that are down there to create a tremendous amount of revenue engine for the town so that they can afford the various programs that we have in place and potentially to support anything that comes out of the comprehensive assessment that's being done by the school department is what that whole issue is about, and I'm very supportive of it. I think it's needed. I think that bigger is better. And, but it has to be done in a controlled environment, and I hope that we can do a study similar to what the schools are doing for that area to amend the plan that was already done, but needs to be updated.
Thank you. Pat, we'll start with you on this one. How would you promote the growth of the commercial tax base in Chelmsford as a member of the Board of Selectmen, please?
Well, I think the rezoning would be one big improvement as far as attracting businesses to the area. I think whatever we can do as far as economic development, we have in the past used tax increment financing to attract businesses and maintain businesses in town. I'm not opposed to using that type of program if it's something that will help us bring good businesses to town. I mean, we want to bring businesses that are friendly to the neighborhood. We don't want another, say, asphalt plant or something like that. Something like biotechnology and high tech is what we're aiming for. So I think we could work with the state officials as far as identifying who those businesses might be and where they might fit into some of the vacancies that we have in some of our office buildings.
Thank you. Glenn, what do you see that the Board of Selectmen can do to promote the growth of the commercial tax base?
Well, I think, as I said before, I think there needs to be a comprehensive assessment of exactly what the needs are for that area. The overlay plan that was put together had in mind particular types of industries and a way to introduce it so that it was not overly offensive to the rest of Chelmsford, meaning that it was a plan that maybe buildings would be so high closer to the Apollo Way or cemetery area, the buildings would get taller as they approached the highway, that there were a lot of amenities involved. The idea, some people have floated the idea that what we need first is the amenities, restaurants, dry cleaners, daycares, so forth, and that will bring the businesses. I think it's the opposite. I think we need to bring the businesses first, and the amount of people in that area, business-wise, will dictate other businesses, services businesses coming into the area. But it needs to start with a comprehensive plan so that we don't misstep when going forward.
Sandy, your thoughts about how, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, you would help promote the growth of the commercial tax rate in this town?
Well, I think the 129 overlay is one way of doing it, but I also understand we have about a 5% vacancy rate in town. And my goal as a selectman would be to try to fill those open spaces with new businesses, attract them to Chelmsford, and make sure that we have no more vacant offices, no more vacant spaces in town.
Okay. The next question, and we'll start with you on this one, Glenn, if we could. Do you believe that currently property taxes in Chelmsford are too high? And if you do agree with that statement, what would you do to ease the tax burden? And are there any services that you'd be willing to cut as a selectman in order to accomplish this goal?
I think that, first of all, there is nothing left to cut. We are working on a level services budget for all departments. I think cutting services is unthinkable. I think that taxes, as everybody does, are too high. It's just a way of life. But I think they are reasonable. The goal is to control those taxes going forward. The average tax bill, I think, in Chelmsford now is around $6,700, and obviously going up from there. I think that bringing in more economic development, right now the town is 80-20. 20% is revenue is brought in by the commercial side, 80% by the revenue side. We need to increase that tremendously, and if so, we can afford additional services and programs in the town, and at the same time mitigate any kind of real estate increases.
Sandy, do you have any thoughts about how the selectmen could ease the tax burden and services you'd be willing to cut if that was one way that you would go about it, please?
I'm never one for cutting services. I believe that there've got to be other ways to reduce the tax burden on the homeowners. One way, I suppose, would be to try to bring in more places that people can live, build more housing, and grow our tax base, rather than trying to rely on, say, the limited number of people that we already have in town with homes that are paying taxes.
Pat, your thoughts in terms of how the taxes might be able to be, the tax burden could be?
Okay, I mean, I'll make it unanimous as far as the panel up here, and I would not advocate any cutting any services. I think the services we provide are, the residents are familiar with them, and I would not encourage any cutting of services. As far as reducing the burden on the residential taxpayer, there's a couple of things that I'd like to do. Several years ago, at a local option, we implemented sales and hotel taxes, where we get to keep some of the revenue that's generated from those activities. I think if we could, advocate to our legislature to come up with some other local options for discretionary type of income like that, discretionary type of expenses like that, that we could possibly increase the revenue that we get from people that come through Chelmsford to eat at our restaurants, stay in our hotels, or do other things like that. There's also another option that I was recently made aware of, where as a town meeting vote, we could set up a fund where people could put money into that. So basically make a donation for taxpayers who might need assistance in paying their real estate taxes. This would be similar to what the ATEF that we have, where taxpayers can make a donation to a fund that's used for educational expenses. This would be something that we'd have to set up a committee to allocate the resources that would be put in there. I think we have a lot of residents and taxpayers in town that are very generous, and they would be willing to make a donation possibly to a fund like that.
Thank you. Sandy, this is one of the questions that was created by the students in the government class. As a member of the Board of Selectmen, please prioritize the following issues. And there are 4, so you might want to write these down as I read them. Schools, property taxes, public works, and public safety. 3 are expenditures and 1 is income, so I'm not quite sure. I'm glad you're answering this question. The last one was public safety, fire and police. So schools, property taxes, public works, public safety. I guess in terms of your time and energy in addressing any of those issues and also funding them, how do you prioritize them as a candidate for selectman, please?
I think the public safety is probably number 1 on my list. I think it's very, very important that our police and our fire employees are well taken care of, so that we are well taken care of as citizens. Secondly, I think property taxes would be my next highest, because that affects every one of us here. We're all homeowners, and we're all affected by increases in property taxes. Public works, I think, would be next, because I think we need to maintain our roads, we need to maintain the quality of our water systems and everything else here in town. And lastly would be the school. I think the schools have shown in the past that they need more money, they use more money, and I think that right now they don't need any more money.
Pat, would you take that list of 4, please, and prioritize it in terms of your own personal priorities?
Okay, first of all, absolutely, it has to be public safety. I mean, we have to keep our community safe, so we need to be sure that the police and fire are adequately trained and have the resources they need to keep our community safe. My next one would be the public schools. It's absolutely imperative that we teach our children, and actually, having good public schools attracts more residents to the community. So I think it's definitely an area that we can't skimp on. Public Works is also very important. We do get a lot of funds, I know, from the state as far as for infrastructure, for roads and bridges and things like that. But it is important that we maintain the infrastructure. As far as property taxes, I think the above 3 all have to do with property taxes, so I really don't see how that really fits into the others. I mean, the others are really, services that we provide. The property taxes is where we get the resources in order to maintain those services that we provide.
Thank you. And Glenn, your thoughts on these list of 4, please.
Well, I would rate public safety first, the school second, property tax third, and public works fourth. The main thing about all of them are they all lead to the same route, and that is the requirement for revenue. Public safety is foremost for safety of our citizens, but it depends on money. You can only have as much as you can, and right now the town is doing well. The schools command half the budget, so you need to focus on that. The property tax is important because every citizen basically in Chelmsford who owns a home or rents is interested in the property tax, where they pay the tax themselves or the apartment owner pays that tax. And Public Works brings up the fourth, but it's not really less important than any of the others. The infrastructure they do, ask anyone whose home didn't get plowed during a storm, or that there was potholes in the road, and they'll all say that they definitely have an interest in Public Works.
Thank you. Does either the reporter from the Lowell Sun or Tom from the Chelmsford News have a question? Tom, go ahead, you're on.
Let's see. The town about a year ago bought the 101 Mill Road property. So as you all know, the committee has been formed and they've been evaluating it for quite some time. I think they're going to be coming up with their report very soon. But if it was entirely up to you, what would you like to see done with the 101 Mill Road property?
Let's start with you on this, Pat. I think we're down to you for starting it as a member of the Board of Selectmen. How would you
Okay.
see that property used?
I don't know that I want to put myself in the middle of a committee that's spent over a year now trying to, studying, opportunities on how we can use that, what we can do with that property. So I'm going to wait to hear what their report says. I think it made sense for us to purchase that property. It was kind of a preemptive strike, I guess you could say, so it wouldn't be used for purposes that we really didn't want it used for. One of the options, I'm sure, might be we probably could sell it, but there's other options I know for uses of it. So I'm going to wait to hear what the committee has to say.
Glenn, do you want to make your thoughts about the use of that building now, or what is your response to Tom's question, please?
First of all, hindsight is everything when something like this occurs. But it appears that based on the dialogue that I've heard, no one has really come up with a particular use for that property. It's very unusual. It's cut up. When we bought it, it needed plumbing work. The town has to insure it. The town has to maintain it. It does come between, for example, the ball fields in the back and the mill at the lower end, and that it would be nice if there was some sort of granting of an easeway going through there so that you could park there and go to the mill. I don't think I've heard a logistical positive in terms of what it should be used for. Some people said that it would make a nice restaurant or wedding function overlooking a scenic area, but you're going to have to find someone who's going to be able to turn that into a viable restaurant with small rooms and so forth. My feeling in general is that it's kind of a black hole in terms of the money we spent for it right now, and that money could have been used probably for something else. I think we bought it with our heart and not with our head at the time.
And Sandy, your thoughts about the 101 Mill Road building and its...
Well, having recently toured it, I'm in love with the place. It is absolutely beautiful. I can see it being used for all sorts of things, like weddings perhaps even. I have no suggestion as to the best use for it, but I think we should keep it, I think we should maintain it, and I think everybody should go tour it if you haven't done it already. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Pat, this is a question that's directed at you.
Okay.
I would like to ask Pat to elaborate on what types of, quote, discretionary spending she wants the legislature to potentially target for additional income. And I'm trying to think through conversations we've had this evening, so I can't help elaborate on that. I hope you understand it. Please
Okay,
go.
yeah, I
Shoot.
absolutely understand it. Yeah,
Thank
having
you.
to do with the local option taxes that I mentioned as far as
Thank you.
meals and hotels. That's a good question. I mean, one thing somebody has suggested is a local gas tax. I don't know that I would support that because everybody can, just go to the next town and possibly get gasoline for a lower price. Maybe it has to, we have a lot of health clubs in town. Maybe there's a tax on working out. I don't know exactly what it would be,
Your
but
spin of the cycle.
there you go. I would want to sit down with our representatives and see if we could come up with some creative ideas on what those might be.
Thank you, Glenn. We'll start with you on this one. Having watched or attended debates for many years, the perpetual question is, why can't the mobile home park be counted for the affordable housing stock? The perpetual answer by the selectmen defers to our state reps and our state senator. Would you as selectmen work to draft legislation and get our reps and senators to sponsor it? Would you work to gain support of the legislation from similar communities so that the mobile home can be counted? Deferring has gotten us nowhere. That was an editorial comment from the writer of the question. Glenn.
To be honest, I don't know what the rules are pertaining to mobile homes and taxes. I would assume that the land there is taxed.
This is whether they count as affordable housing, is the question, Glenn, whether they count toward the town's 10%.
All right. Again, I don't know what the state laws are regarding it. I'm sure that it's not a city ordinance, that it's a state ordinance, and whatever that may be, the town must live with it.
Okay. Sandy, any action that you would take to try and get the mobile home to be counted towards your affordable housing percentage?
I absolutely would. I've been saying that for years. I had a sister who actually lived in there for a long time. When I pursued it, I was told that the reason they can't count it is because they're not on a permanent structure, because they can be picked up and moved. So I would advocate to the state legislature that they need to change that ruling so that we could count it towards our affordable housing.
Thank you. Pat, your sentiments on this issue?
My understanding is the reason that they're not counted to affordable housing stock is because they are not deed restricted. Just because somebody lives there doesn't mean they're low income. Quite frankly, I know some people that live there could probably afford to live in a much nicer permanent home, and they just choose to live there because some of those homes are very nice. So unless and until they could be deed restricted, I really don't see any way that we could count them on our affordable housing stock because, as I said, anybody could go live there no matter how much money they were making, what their income was.
Thank you. Okay, I think we start with you on this one, Sandy. Would you be in favor of reinstating health insurance benefits for members of the Board of Selectmen?
No.
Okay, Pat?
No.
Glenn?
No.
We could have been over at 7:30. For you, then we already got that. We did 101 Mill Road. So, and if people in the audience have questions, please get them up because this is the last question I have before we go to questions of each other and the closing statements for the candidates for selectmen. To remind you, there are 3 people running for 2 seats, so this is a contested race. We'll start with you, Pat, on this one. We heard this asked of the school committee. The school department is engaged in a study of school facilities. If the results of this study recommend major improvements that go beyond what the town can afford in its operating budget, would you, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, be open to supporting a property 2.5 debt exemption to fund these improvements?
I would not at this time. I don't feel there's an appetite in the town of Chelmsford for a Proposition 2.5 override, so I don't think it would pass, and I don't see the need to go through an exercise just to have something like that fail. I am encouraged that they are doing a complete facility study. It would be interesting to see what that comes back with and what they say about it. Some of those buildings probably could be reconfigured and repurposed. Maybe 101 Mill Road could be used for something. I don't know. At this point, I could not. I think I could not support Proposition 2.5 override.
Glenn, would you support a Proposition 2.5 override to fund the improvements that might be suggested by the School Facilities Committee?
I don't think it would probably be a Proposition 2.5. It'd probably be a debt exemption, so that the money is for a set period of time, doesn't go on for.
My apologies. The question does say a property 2.5 debt exemption, not an override. Okay. So it is a debt exemption.
All right. Some people feel, and it's been said tonight, that it's probably that report is going to come out and it's not going to recommend that we need new facilities. I'm not so encouraged by that whole thing. I attended the meetings. I saw there some preliminary studies that they did. I believe there is going to be a request, not tomorrow, but in the near term, relatively near term, that there are going to be new facilities. For one thing, you would not build a school the way those schools were built today, because of the flow and the way the educational package is presented to the students and so forth. So even though if you took a building and you blew out the four walls, you still couldn't create a modern school. So I think there is going to be that need. The question is, can we create an economic environment along preferably the 129 corridor that can pay for a lot of that costs going forward? Right now it's an undeveloped area, and we need to redevelop it, create more money to pay for those future needs in facilities.
Thank you. And Sandy, your thoughts about the Proposition 2.5 debt exemption for this school department facility study?
The debt exemption is for the study.
No, it is for what any major improvements they may recommend. Yep, for the actual implementation of the. Yep.
I tend to be a Yankee, thrifty type person, and I never am looking to find new ways to spend money. I think I would rather try to find other ways to fund these things than getting into more debt.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to give you an opportunity. You may each ask one question of one of the other candidates. Glenn, I'll start with you, and you can ask either Sandy or Pat a question if you have one, not necessarily part of the evening if you do not.
This question's for Sandy. What do you think let's say one or two major issues, well, let's say the two major issues that will face Chelmsford in the next 3 years?
I think the 129 corridor is going to present challenges, and taxes are always a problem.
Okay, great. Sandy, do you have a question for either Pat or for Glenn?
I have a question for Pat. When you were selectman, you could not vote on sewer grinder pumps because you said you would be hooking up to the sewer at your home. You were given a 1-year reprieve. Have you hooked up to the sewer yet? And if not, have you paid the betterment fee? I'm not given a 1-year reprieve. I live, my driveway is over 400 feet from my house is over 400 feet from the road where the sewer runs along the road. So until either my septic fails or I sell my house, I'm not required to hook up to the town septic system.
Okay, thank you. And Pat, do you have a question for either Sandy or Glenn?
Yeah, I have a question for Glenn. Glenn, I'm sure you've reviewed the town charter, and it's been 10 years since we've had a comprehensive review of it. I wonder if you would agree that it's time to do it again, and if so, if you have any suggestions on where it could be improved.
The town charter is about 61 pages long. I read the whole thing. It's an easy read. I thought it would be difficult, but it wasn't. It's written in plain language, and I think it's structured so that it allows for changes as time goes forward, that it's just not locked into one dialogue, and I don't see anything needed to change it at this point.
Thank you. We're now at the part where each of these candidates can make a 2-minute closing statement to tell you why they would like you to vote for them. On April 5th, you can only vote for 2 of the 3. So Sandy, we'll start with your closing statement, then Pat and Glenn, you will have the last word for the candidates, please.
I want to thank you, Ellen, for being here tonight, and the League of Women Voters for hosting this candidates debate tonight, and for Pat and for Greg for coming, for running, and also attending this debate tonight. I also want to thank all of you out there sitting there and those watching from home on TV. I love Chelmsford. My mother moved here when I was small with my 3 younger siblings after my father, a young Air Force lieutenant, was killed in a training accident while preparing to go to Korea. My siblings, my children, and I all graduated from Chelmsford High School and have considered this our home. As your selectman, I will fight to improve our economy, fight for fiscal reforms, lower our tax burden, and do my best to represent you. I have signed the Citizens for Limited Taxation No New Tax Pledge, and I will fight to honor that pledge for you. I want to be a voice of the people, and I humbly ask for one of your 2 votes on Tuesday, April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Pat, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event this evening. And it's 3 people that I want to thank for their service to the town. Evelyn Thorin, Matt Hansen, and Janet Askenberg all now serve on boards. Evelyn on the school committee, Matt and Janet on the Board of Selectmen, and they are not running for re-election. All have served very competently, and we're definitely going to miss them on their respective boards. I also want to publicly thank all my supporters and the people who have helped me with my campaign. You can't do this without a strong support system behind you. They come out, to hold signs. They send postcards. They're always right there to offer encouragement, and I wouldn't be here without them. To get to myself. I grew up in Chelmsford. I'm willing to work with the board to come up with creative ideas to try to address the issues that we face as a town. I'll continue to be accessible and responsive to the residents of the town. If you have an issue, if you see me on the bike trail or in a restaurant or at the grocery store, don't hesitate to stop and ask me about what's going on. I'll answer as many questions as I can, and I'll help you find answers, find solutions to any problems that you might have. I'm number 1 on the ballot, and I respectfully ask for one of your 2 votes on Election Day, April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Glenn, the last word from you is your 2-minute statement, please.
The town is constantly facing wants and needs. Sometimes to understand complicated issues, it's you want to put things in a situation that you understand more easily. So, for example, let's say that the town was just 1 resident. What would they want in terms of their wants? Schools that maintain their excellence, taxes and fees reduced, the town's physical health maintained, revenue sharing from the state increased, acquisition of the town's limited open spaces to increase, affordable housing for seniors, veterans, and families increased, public safety departments that ensure the welfare of the town's citizens to remain strong, and a quality of life for present and future generations to continue and to be increased if possible. Competing with these wants are, unfortunately, needs. Mandates from state and federal government that must be upheld. Capital projects that ensure the service level and/or the useful use of facilities is maintained. Health and benefit costs that are increasing at almost double-digit rates. Other post-employment benefits that are not funded now but need to be in the future by mandate. And competitive wages for our public employees that must be maintained to ensure a quality workforce. What do all of them have in common? One thing: dependence on revenue. We have in some ways become financially complacent by the town's management team being able to balance the town's needs and wants with the realities of what their income is. The exact mix may not be what every resident's ideal is, but on the whole, it's been a job that's been well done. However, in the years to come, I believe that this will not be the case. The ratio of our commercial versus residential income must be increased. I hope you would join me in making that happen. My name is Glenn Diggs. I respectfully request one of your 2 votes for selectmen on April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for running. We're very grateful. Thank you. If you will vacate your seats for the next round, we're grateful. I have been told that Attorney William Harvey has in fact arrived. He is one of the 4 candidates for for constable. So if you would like to come up and just make a statement or introduce yourself to the voters, we'll do that before we go on to the library trustees. So please come on up. We did explain to the voters ahead of time what the constable does, so they've had a little education thanks to the League of Women Voters, but I'm sure you can do that even more. So William Harvey is one of the 4 candidates who is running for 1 seat for the constable of the town of Chelmsford. The other 3 who are not able to make it this evening are Richard McClure, Andrew Weiner, and Charlie Wojciech. Thank you. The microphone is yours.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me tonight. League of Women Voters. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to follow in the footsteps of the former Constable William Spence, who served this town for decades. My name is William Harvey. I'm 45 years old. I've grown up in this town my entire life. Harvey families from generations, going back to the construction industry, Harvey's Building Supplies, and recent developers in this town. I graduated Chelmsford High School. I went through the Chelmsford school system, graduated in 1989. I graduated from the University of Massachusetts in Lowell in 1993. After that, I went to Massachusetts School of Law, located in Andover, and graduated in 1997. I'm a trial attorney. I'm licensed to practice both in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And I believe that based on my education, experience, that I will be the most qualified candidate for the town constable position. In addition to serving as an attorney, I also dedicate a substantial amount of time to the Greater Lowell Bar Association. 2013, I was named Attorney of the Year for pro bono work, working with domestic violence victims, mostly women that need restraining orders, as well as divorces. Once again, this is an important position. A lot of people don't know about the position or the roles of the constable. However, I do. I've used constables throughout my career as an attorney, and I would respect your vote on April 5th. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Attorney William Harvey.
Thank you. Attorney Harvey, if I could, I have one question. You've answered the question about what your qualifications are. Could you tell us why you've decided to run for constable, and why do you want to fill that position, please?
Well, I've always had an interest in the constable position. However, I would never consider running against Mr. Spence. He has always done a great job. I've used his services for many years, and with the position open, I've decided to run, and I believe that my qualifications far exceed any of the other candidates, and it would be a great honor to serve and follow in the footsteps of Mr. Spence.
Thank you. Do either of the representatives from the press have a question? Okay, you're all set. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. If the 3 candidates for the 2 seats for library trustee would now be good enough to come forward. These are Jillian Kenny, Lisa Daigle, and David Braslau. Lisa and David are incumbents running for re-election. Jillian is running for the seat as well, for one of the 2 seats. I apologize. League of Women Voters, did you give me a pile of questions that say library trustees that I've lost, Mary? So just chat among yourselves here. We have the floor until 9:30. Did I mix this? Oh, they got put in my recycle pile. I apologize. And here's the other one. I'm on the recycling commission in Westford, so this happens in my house all the time. My husband says, "Where's the shopping list?" And I've already recycled it. Okay. Thank you, and I apologize. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, kind lady. All righty. Thank you all for being here. We'll start with a question about what your priorities are for the library service. And David, I think we'll start with you, and at the same time, well, I'll do that as a separate question. So what are your priorities for the service of the library to the town of Westford? Chelmsford.
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 So there are a couple of things from my perspective. As most people know, we've embarked on a master plan for the library property, and we're beginning this spring to execute on that. It's very important to me to see that completed and to link the library with the other assets that we have in the center of town. So that's clearly a high priority. We continue to work very closely with the Friends of the Library to fund programming. As I think most people are aware, nearly all of the library programming funding comes through the Friends of the Library and the book sale rather than from municipal funding. So the close working relationship with the Friends is probably my other most significant priority.
Thank you. I need help because I can't see your name cards. Are you Jillian or are you Lisa?
Lisa.
Thank you very much. Lisa, would you tell us what your priorities are for the Chelmsford Library, please?
Sure. Of course, David. David and I have been on the board together for 9 years, so we absolutely share those priorities. Another priority that I have for the library is to we've been able to have the staff attend educational training and things like that, and I am very, very committed to making sure that there's funding for the staff to continue to go to conventions and training and all different kinds of things. I'm very committed to that.
Thank you. Jillian, what are your priorities for the Chelmsford Library, please?
Well, this is my first time doing this, so as a resident, I'm an avid user of the library, and so I guess the priorities would be to continue having it be a great space for the public and for families, and for a great place for people to work, and have the staff get what they need as well. So.
Thank you. Lisa, what made you decide to run for another term?
Well, initially, 10 years ago when I did this, initially I thought that I could bring a different kind of perspective to the board because I had worked previously at the Pollard Library in Lowell, and I thought, well, I can definitely, because I know that we had library professionals on the board, and I said, well, I can definitely bring a perspective of the other side. But now, as I've been on the board for 10 years, there's so many different facets of serving on the board that I'm just so much more interested in, and it's interesting to me. So I wanted to do it again.
Great. Jillian, you mentioned that you're a library user. Are there other reasons that you decided at this time to run for the trustees, please?
Yep. When I first moved to Chelmsford, it was the first building I saw and loved. So I have my degree in library science, and I worked at the library when I first moved here. So I keep in touch with everybody, and they've continually said, oh, you should, now that you're not working here, you should keep a hand in things. And so I thought this was a good way to do it.
Thank you. And David, you're running for a fourth term, I understand. What made you decide to run for re-election?
Yeah, so I think it's true for me as well as for Lisa and for Jillian that I got talked into this. I had no idea when I embarked on this what I was getting into. Maureen Foley, who's the head of children's at the library, approached me and said, David, you're in the library all the time. Hannah, who's my daughter now, a teenager and a freshman at Chelmsford High School, and I went to Dads and Donuts, and it just seems like we're in the library every day, sometimes multiple times every day. And I said, sure, sounds like I can help. Little did I know what the process was, that this was actually an elected position, that the board had some really serious business to deal with, and we have had some serious things, particularly on the financial front, and it's been very satisfying. So, when the time came to decide whether to run again, I realized that there are things that I've started, that aren't finished yet. And, the reason why I'm continuing to run is to finish those things that I've started.
Thank you. So, Jillian, for you, and this is one of the questions that was given to the league by the students from Chelmsford High School. How would you get the teenage demographic more involved in the public library?
That's a great question. So I have a teenager, and I work in middle school in Lowell. And so a lot of it is programming and knowing what they're interested in, providing opportunities that might not seem traditional to get them in, and using technology a lot more, just the added ways of providing information to really get them in. I think that would be a good
David,
thing.
your thoughts about how to lure in the high schoolers? And the
Yeah, well, I may have a different challenge. I have a hard time getting my teenager out of the library. And I think part of that comes from being avid library users from the beginning, right? She feels like the library is a second home. And we feel comfortable enough in the library that, you know, when the family goes to the library, we all go in our own separate directions. And, you know, it might be an hour later before we find each other again. So, you know, I think we need to focus on the bigger picture, which is, you know, the library has become, and it always has been, a center for culture within the community. And I think, you know, to the extent that we can continue to host events in the library that bring people of all ages and all backgrounds, that's going to help foster the use by everybody, including by teenagers.
Thank you. Lisa, your thoughts about bringing the teenagers or keeping them there, as Heather is?
Sure. I have a teen and I hate this word, a tween. And, you know, like David's family, we're at the library a lot. I think one of the key things is to make sure that, you know, the library users at the high school and the library users at the middle school and the library users at the elementary school level all know what's going on at the Chelmsford Public Library. Because a lot of times parents will say to me, "Oh, I didn't know that was going on at the library." You know, and because they're mostly reading things from school or notices from school. I think closer interaction that way will bring, as David said, people from, you know, all parts of town and all, you know, all ages and all types and for all purposes.
Thank you. David, to start with you on this one, how much is the McKay branch used and should it be closed?
So this question comes up all the time. It's actually used a lot. I think people are aware that, you know, we continue to adjust hours at McKay, and we seem to have come up with a solution that serves a broad variety of people because it's walkable. It's really used a lot by people in the community, and it has access not only to the materials in McKay, but the materials at the Adams Library and throughout the library consortium. So it is actively used. It's used a lot. We get a big bang for the buck, and I think as people are aware, if for some reason we were to decide not to use that facility any longer, we would have to return it to the folks who made it available to us. So that would be a pretty dire consequence.
Okay.
We don't want to go there.
Lisa, do you have any other perspective on the McKay and its use and whether or not it should be closed or kept open?
Mine's the same as David, absolutely. And not only, as he says, if we did decide to shut it down, which I don't advocate, yeah, it would revert to the family who donated it to the town. I mean, that is I don't know, how old is the McKay? It's 100 years old. I mean, that would be a difficult thing to do. But also, like you said, we get a lot of bang for the buck, and we've, you know, changed and rejiggered the schedule to accommodate the way that it's used, and especially as David again said. Thanks, Dave, for saying all my answers for me. The way that people in North Chelmsford use the McKay, and you know, we've done focus groups and we've done questionnaires and all that stuff, and we've come up with something that is usable for them.
Jillian, your thoughts about the McKay branch?
I wouldn't want to close it either, just for the accessibility for people that are local to it, but and feel like there's probably a way to keep it open, especially the fact that it's a building that's available at the moment. So.
Thank you. Okay, this comes from the students at Chelmsford High School, and we'll start with you on this one, Lisa. Would you favor putting a Starbucks-style coffee shop or study area in our library? So I guess they mean both at the Adams and at McKay. If you
Gosh. I don't know. My husband is a big proponent of that. He says get rid of all the books and have a coffee shop. I don't agree with
He's
that.
not running for election.
No, but he may be watching this, so. I've seen it in other libraries, and it's, I don't know, it's different. Maybe adjacent to the library, I don't know. If it's something that brings more people in, maybe we'll look into it. I don't know, I just don't know.
Okay. Jillian, your thoughts about having that kind of, and let me just tell you exactly, it doesn't necessarily say Starbucks. It says a Starbucks-style coffee shop or study area in our libraries.
Immediately my thought was, oh, yes, because I love Starbucks. But I guess I would probably say no, only for the preservation of the books. And having food and drinks in the library is always that rule of it shouldn't happen, just to keep things preserved. I don't know. I know that people bring things in, but I agree also, maybe there's a Dunkin' Donuts across the street, so I think people want coffee.
One
they
that
can
way
get.
and one that way, actually, so.
I know.
David, what thought do you have on this, please?
Yeah, we discourage people from eating and drinking in the library, and it's primarily because there are people who have to clean up,
Yep.
and, after the people who use the library. And I can only imagine that, if coffee was readily available, that the custodial nightmare of trying to keep things clean would just be challenging. I do think that, the Winstanley development helps with Dunkin' Donuts, as we talked about, being nearby the library, and Friendly's is there. So, I think we can make do without it.
I have no more questions, so we get to the point where you can ask questions of each other if you have any interest in that. Jillian, do you have a question for either Lisa or David?
To start with me, so I guess my question for David would be, what's been the most difficult decision you had to make for the library?
That's a good question.
It is a good question, and Lisa knows this because she knows how passionate the discussions we have. We have a really interesting and engaged board, and I guess one of the good things that we do is that we're able to discuss, debate, and decide in a very respectful manner. We don't always see eye to eye, and there have been plenty of times where I've made the decision, not necessarily to follow the mainstream, as Lisa's looking at me. In fact, just recently, we came up, recently at the last meeting, which was last week, we had a vote on funding, and looking at the state of the library finances, I was the sole dissenter who said, until we know how much this is really going to cost, I'm going to have to vote against the motion.
Lisa, do you have a question for either Jillian or for David?
No, I guess for Jillian, just, what's your motivation for running? I mean, you kind of already answered it, but if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Really just, I moved here and started a family, and with my background in education first and then library science, I started trying to get involved in the town, and I'm on the board of the CYBL for school basketball, and so I thought this was clearly a much more political realm to jump into, but I thought libraries was a good place for me to try and make a mark, so.
Thank you.
And David, do you have a question for either Lisa or Jillian that you'd like to propose?
Sure, for Lisa.
What's up, Dave?
I know that, like me, when you joined the board, you weren't exactly informed about what you were getting into. Looking back at the last 10 years, what do you think the biggest challenge to you has been in participating in our discussions?
I think just doing my homework and getting the background on, because we discussed so many varied things, whether it's finances or policy or procedure or staffing or this or that. I just think doing the homework has been, you know, the most, I'm not gonna say difficult, the most, I'm not gonna say onerous, I don't know what the word is, but the biggest part of it is just doing the homework. And I've liked it, all of it.
Before we get to closing statements, do either of the people here from the press have a question for the library trustees candidates? Tom?
I guess I have one that maybe if we could start with David or Lisa, because it has to do with that outbuilding that we've been trying to get constructed, the new storage building and that kind of thing. I was wondering first if you could tell us what the status is of that, when it might be completed, and what might be going in between the building and the main library, and how you all feel about that. Maybe Jillian could comment on that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm probably the best one to start that discussion. I think I've kind of spearheaded this master plan for the library property. So what Tom's talking about is the construction of what we're describing as a carriage house style storage building. It's a small structure that's going to serve the purposes of the Friends of the Library to do the book collections and sorting, and also the library staff for shop areas. Neither function is supported within the library now. So the status of the project is that the site work has been bid. Contractor has been selected and will be presented to the Board of Selectmen next week, and we expect work to start at the beginning of April. The building construction itself, the bid was just released, and we expect that to be awarded around the beginning of May, with all of the work completed around the end of June.
Thank you.
Great. So that was not really a question, it was an informational thing. And thank you for filling us in. I don't think there are any rebuttals or responses to that. But that does bring us to 2-minute closing statements. And I think we'll just start at the other, no, I did that to you once before, Jillian. I won't do that to you again. Let's start in the middle. Lisa, if you would give us your closing statement. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight, and I want to thank the audience here and at home. Nearly 10 years ago, when I first came before Chelmsford voters to ask for their support for library trustee, I promised to fulfill the duties of a trustee in the areas of funding and access. I've been so fortunate for the last 10 years to be part of a team that's committed to keeping the library fully funded, open, and accessible to all who want to use it, whether they walk into the Adams Library in the center, patronize the very popular McKay branch in North Chelmsford, or take advantage of vast holdings online. During my time on the board, we've considered questions as varied as, how do we invest and best use a bequest from a longtime benefactor? What happens if the power goes out all over town? What's the best way to advocate statewide for our library in our region? Another important issue that the board has spent a lot of time on in the past several years is that of financial reporting. My colleague here, David Breslau, has been instrumental in updating and modernizing the way the board handles its financial statements. Going forward, the board will be focusing on several issues. One, of course, will be local and state advocacy, that is, being vocal proponents for library services and funding with our patrons, our elected and appointed town officials, and our lawmakers. Another area will be that of the physical landscape. I always like to say that the Chelmsford Library is literally at the center of our town. To get anywhere, you have to actually go around it. The board is committed to making the library and its grounds more user-friendly, which we were just talking about, which means that we're on track to improve storage, make parking better, enhance safety on the library property, and interface with the Greenway project to make ours a truly workable, usable, livable center for all. I want to thank David for being a wonderful leader and a colleague. I want to thank Jillian for stepping up to seek public office, the library director and staff for keeping the heart of our community humming and productive, and the Friends of the Library for their unstinting support in so many ways. I respectfully ask for one of your 2 votes for library trustee on election day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jillian Kenny, your closing statement, please.
I also want to thank the Women of League Women Voters for having invited me to this tonight, for everybody for listening. And I jumped into this forum, basically this world of politics, just to see how it would be. I wanted to become part of the town in a more significant way, I guess, than just being a resident. I felt like this was a great place for me because of my background. Schools and libraries, working at the library. I love the library. I go in there all the time, and I want to be a part of making it, keeping it great, but also helping to make improvements when they're needed, and also learn about the town as it comes up and getting to be a part of those decisions. I hope that I can ask for someone's vote for this, because I would love to be a part of the town in that way. So, thank you.
Thank you for running. David, the closing comment, please.
Sure. I've covered much of this already, so I think I can go mostly off script. But I do want to thank the League of Women Voters for this forum, and I think, I share with Lisa and with Jillian the fact that, this election is being taken seriously. I think in the past, the library trustees have been largely overlooked, and the amount of work that actually goes into running this facility and providing services to the town is tremendous. As I look back over the past 9 years at the things that I've done as part of the board, I actually got a little bit overwhelmed. There's been an awful lot that's happened. And we've talked about much of that. The master plan for the library is certainly significant and something that I've spearheaded. Energy conservation and HVAC controls is an issue that we talk about every meeting. And we've talked about it for the last 9 years. We've made vast improvements in the operation of the library. It's more comfortable, and it's saved us a tremendous amount of money. As Lisa said, updating the financial documents for the library and respecting the wishes of our donors has been a huge undertaking. I feel like we've really made a great stride there. I've been involved in pretty much every library activity and every function, both as a participant, a volunteer, 4th of July parades, you name it, I've been there. So, I'm looking forward to the opportunity of continuing to serve as I have. I've noticed that on the ballot I'm going to be the third of 3 candidates, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. So I'd appreciate everybody's attention and perhaps one of your 2 votes on April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you all for running, and thank you for being here. So a reminder that the Chelmsford town elections are on Tuesday the 5th. Only precincts 2 and 3 will vote at the Senior Center over on Groton Road on Route 40. All of the other 7 precincts will vote at the McCarthy Middle School. Okay? And the League of Women Voters ask you to participate because democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you for being here.
Ellen, thank you for being here. You always bring so much to our debates. You're a wonderful moderator.
Thank you so very much. Are these wonderful recycling?
I do the hashtag, but I don't.
I put that card right here and I use it all the time. They came from Groton.
We're in Billerica.
Okay, and I have a bunch for you, actually. Thank you all.